יאללה, 100%. ביי.
אוקיי, כן.
חבר'ה של השבע
וזה
בבקשה.
לא פאורפוינט.
We are here in Leonardo da Vinci weekly meeting of looking the occupation in the eye. And tonight, here you guys can see everybody. Not really because of the lights.
بعد هون مش حاضر أضل والله نايس. أنا رايحين يومين صراحة مش وقت بس ممكن بالرجعة بس لسه هون. يس حميد أوكي. مساء الخير. عرفتوا سؤال يعني تخيل باش نشغل مي لو مدبر أنجليت. Show of hands aside from Suraya. Okay, so someone needs to sit next to Suraya to translate, because I speak Hebrew but it's not very great, so I'll speak in English instead.
I'm going to translate, but I'm not sure I will translate.
Okay, thank you. طيب, my name is Rafat Sub Laban. I'm a human rights lawyer, human rights defender from Jerusalem, occupied Jerusalem. Closer, okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rafat Sub Laban. I'm a human rights lawyer and human rights defender from occupied Jerusalem. Masmoor, you hear me well? Okay. So, I currently work for the UN Human Rights Office in Ramallah in the West Bank. But tonight I'm speaking in my personal capacity, like as Rafat, not as Rafat who works for the UN. And in addition to my work in human rights, I'm also a member of the Rafat Sub Laban family, who you might have heard about. This is, you might have seen this, it's a mural that we drew, we painted in my family's house in the old city of Jerusalem a few weeks before my elderly parents and my family were forcibly removed from the house, so Israeli settlers will seize it. I will tell you more about my family's story, but I was also asked to try and speak about the bigger context, try to speak about it like in 1 hour. So I prepared a few slides, photos, just to help me as a visual aid, but also to make the conversation more organized. So Stop the Ongoing Nakba was actually one of the slogans we used in my family's struggle. And we say it's an ongoing Nakba because myself, my family, and a lot of Palestinians believe that the Nakba never stopped. It only continued. It started happening in 47, 48. It happened again in 67, continued to happen between and after until today. And that's why we say it's an ongoing Nakba that must be stopped. So this is what I'll try to talk about in the next hour. To start, what is the Nakba? I'll try to explain. Some of you already know, but I'll try to speak about it anyway. The ongoing Nakba. You all have heard about ethnic cleansing, tuhur ethnic. And I'll try to explain what that means. Apartheid, also another term that all of us have been hearing a lot, what that means. And then how Israel, with Western support and Western aid, actually enforces, maintains an occupation, a system of apartheid, colonialism, and oppression of Palestinians, of my people. Why is Israel demolishing houses in East Jerusalem in the West Bank? That's also a question I will try to answer. Evictions, you all have heard about evictions, or so-called evictions, as what happened with my family. I say they're not evictions. To say it's evictions is belittling or taking the real context and importance of what's happening and how cruel it is. I'll also talk about Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, and the campaigns that happened around Sheikh Jarrah in 2021, Silwan, and then also about my family's campaign, which actually started in 2015, not recently. We had the first campaign when the Israelis tried to forcibly evict and remove my family in 2015. So we started our campaign then, and it continued until today. Finally, I will try to speak also about how Israel is criminalizing Palestinian identity. And the most recent attempt is by raising the Palestinian flag, which for me, if the flag is only a symbol, what they're trying to ban is our identity and allowing us to identify as Palestinians. And finally, I'll speak like shortly about my vision for the way ahead, because I believe we can do better. And I'll share my vision with you. Hopefully it will resonate with some of you. And here, this is a photo from one of our protests. It was actually the first protest in June this year, sorry. And it was the only protest where we were able to raise Palestinian flags, because in this protest, they assaulted everyone who raised one, including myself, my mother, member of Knesset Ofer Kassif was also assaulted for holding a flag, and a number of activists who were also arrested just for raising a flag, something so trivial. The second photo is from South Africa, part of the campaign to like ask for stopping apartheid in South Africa and for freeing South Africa from this oppression, from this apartheid. So, ongoing Nakba, the Nakba is not a single event which happened in 1 year in 48. It's actually a process. It's something that started then, but it's a process that's been ongoing since 48 until today. So not one single historical event. It's a process, an ongoing process of colonialism, of forcible transfer, of uprooting Palestinians, of dispossessing Palestinians, and denying their existence, deleting their existence. This is why we say ongoing Nakba, because it didn't stop. So today we mark 75 years of Nakba, the ongoing Nakba, and I'll try to say how it started, but not the historical, let's say, not like the historical occurrences, more like, let's say, what the results were. What was the outcome of the Nakba? So between 47 and 49, out of 1.5 million Palestinians, 750,000 were displaced. So over half of my people were forcibly removed from their homeland 75 years ago. And not in one day, it's a process. It happened over 2 years back then, 47 to 49. But again, this process continued afterwards. So over half of my people were made refugees, removed from their homeland. Over 78% of historical Palestine was also seized, what became Israel after the 48 events. 530 villages destroyed, depopulated, razed, and some stolen, like repopulated with Jewish Israelis. And I really remember like these very striking images, like in West Jerusalem villages, in Qatamon and other places, where you see those old Arab houses where an Israeli family lives and continues to deny that this house or property was built and owned and Palestinian family used to live in it. They always continue to deny this. Another example for me was Ain Hod, a village town just before Haifa, the same. The whole town, now Israelis live there, and what's even more cruel is that the original inhabitants of Ain Hod live on the hill next by, and they see their houses stolen where Israelis live. I think this is very, very cruel from my perspective. So 530 villages, cities, towns destroyed, depopulated, and at least 15,000 Palestinians killed in a series of atrocities and massacres. Documented at least 70 massacres, some of them Deir Yassin, you've heard about the Tantura massacre, and others. This is the result, this is the consequence of what the Nakba caused to my people. And then after the Nakba came the Naksa, the 1967 war, the events of 1967, and again, there was a huge cost for the Palestinian people. 300,000 Palestinians were displaced from the West Bank, mostly to Jordan, and 100,000 Syrians from Al-Julan, that you Israelis called Golan, we call it Al-Julan al-Muhtal, the occupied Julan. So 100,000 Syrians were also displaced in 1967 to Syria. And Moshe Dayan, in his memoirs, he recounts how 12,000 Palestinians were displaced in Tul Karim and in Qalqilia as a punitive measure because they resisted during the 67 events. So as a punitive measure, 12,000 Palestinians were made homeless by Moshe Dayan's decision. Dawn of 7 of June 1967, Moshe Dayan gave the order to occupy the old city of Jerusalem. The city was seized by midday, and a day later, I think Jericho, Hebron, Bethlehem, and others were captured as well. So you've heard of the Moroccan neighborhood in Jerusalem's old city. So it's a historical neighborhood, over 700 years old. It was demolished immediately after East Jerusalem, or the old city was occupied, sorry. A whole neighborhood, a historical one, was destroyed. All the families were forced to evacuate. And the point behind raising this historical neighborhood, displacing its people, was making a larger space for the Western Wall, so Israelis can pray. And historically, Jews used to pray. It wasn't really an issue. It was a small area maybe, but I don't see the logic behind demolishing a whole neighborhood just to open a prayer space. My father, by the way, Mustafa, he was 16-year-old at the time, and he actually witnessed the demolition from, I don't know the exact house, but my father used to live in one of those houses overseeing the plaza. So he actually saw it in his own eyes when he was 16, the demolition of the Mughrabi quarter. And he remembers quite well that there was at least one family that refused to leave the house, and they actually bombed the house on their heads. They died inside. אני צריך קצת נייר. I'm sweating. כאילו like tissues. So ethnic cleansing, טיהור אתני. שמעתם על טיהור אתני? מה זה טיהור אתני? So in international law, there's no exact definition of ethnic cleansing, but there's a definition put by a UN commission of experts that was investigating basically crimes or war crimes in former Yugoslavia. So in their mission, they came across ethnic cleansing, and they defined it as the following: rendering an area ethnically homogeneous, meaning making an area only one kind of people live in it, or one race or one religion. So like removing the others, excluding them, removing them from this area, and only one kind of people will stay. By using force, in koach, or intimidation by using fear, to remove persons or given groups from the area. Another definition they gave was using terror, like terror, to terrorize civilians to leave this area. And again, the idea is you don't want those people because they're not the same color or same religion or same political view, and you don't want them here, so you have to leave. This is ethnic cleansing. And from my point of view, as someone who studied international law, I think it is taking place in the West Bank, it is taking place in Jerusalem, but it's also taking place here, like in present-day Israel. These policies that I'm about to talk to, whether it's evictions, demolitions, they not only affect They don't only affect Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, they also affect Palestinians, or who you call Israeli Arabs, who live here. It also affects them. There's also demolitions in here that affect the Arab population particularly. Yes. Oh, shukran. It's the humidity. So, this is Lynn Hastings, the humanitarian coordinator of the United Nations. מתאמת humanitarian של האומות מאוחדות בשטחים כאילו. So she says hundreds of Palestinians are at risk of forced eviction in East Jerusalem. This devastating practice, incompatible with international law, must end. Now, this is good, but again, I have a problem with using the term evictions because it whitewashes what's happening. Evictions, like if you're renting an apartment in New York and you have a disagreement with your landlord and they ask you to get out, this is an eviction. But what's happening for us, it's something more grave, and I'll explain why. So I want you to hear this video. Oh, sorry. אני אעשה את זה כאילו בסוף. So Jerusalem's old city. Yerushalayim Iratika. Now in 1967, exactly after the city was occupied, in the building next to my family where they used to live, 11 families were removed by the Israeli army. So generals, Israeli army generals came and they forced 11 families out of the building next to my family. The reasoning is that the building used to be owned by Jews before 1948. And in some cases, like the claims are dating back to 150 to 100 years ago. That was the claim. They removed the family, and later on the government passed the property to a movement called Ateret Lushna. You might have heard of it. It's what established Ateret Kohanim. It's a settler association. They have a very declared role of Judaizing Jerusalem, removing Palestinians and settling Israeli Jews in the Muslim quarter and in the heart of East Jerusalem among Palestinians. Thank you, everyone. So yes, Ateret Kohanim Lushna. Now this is 1967, exactly after the occupation. Later the same years, 10 more families were removed in the same neighborhood. Now this neighborhood is called Aqabat al-Khaldiyya, which is where my family used to live. So we have 11, we have 10 in 1967, 21 families. In 1978, 28 families were removed, and they were removed to establish yeshivas. One was called Shovobanim, and the other was called Nakhmat Zion. So 28 Palestinian families were left homeless, so a bunch of Israelis can have a place to study the Torah. That's what yeshiva is, right? Where they study Torah. So make 28 Palestinian families homeless to study Torah. And then since 1967 until 2023, in my family's neighborhood, 54 families were removed. Yes, this is the information we collected from a number of sources, including the UN and the Institute of Palestinian Studies. And my family was family number 54, us. The family number 53 was the Abu Asaf family, removed in 2019. And then in addition to those 54 houses I've mentioned, there were dozens others already forcibly evicted in East Jerusalem, in the Old City, in Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah, Beit Hanina, and others. In total, according to the UN, 218 families are under this threat only in East Jerusalem. This is a map or two maps by Ir Amim. I really appreciate the work Ir Amim does. They're a great organization, and I think we need more like them. So this is a map of the Old City. The Jewish quarter is in blue, Muslim quarter, Christian quarter, Armenian quarter. The blue dots are houses already seized by settlers inside the Muslim quarter, inside the Christian quarter, and more recently, it's not on the map yet, but you've heard about the Armenian quarter. They're also acquiring properties there. So really, like, it's spreading from here to here to here to here. And particularly the neighborhood I'm telling you about, Aqabat al-Khaldiyya, 54 families were removed. And ultimately, this is the video I will show you in a bit. Ultimately, the plan is to expand the Jewish quarter to here. And I don't think it's very far from here. It's like 10, 20 years, not more. Next to it is a map of Jerusalem. And again, it shows you in red settlement expansion, also in Silwan, all the red dots, and other parts of East Jerusalem. I need some tissues now. Do you recognize this guy on the left? You should. Sorry? No, his name is, wait, let me just check. His name is Metityahu HaKohen. So he's Dan? No, Dan Luria is his associate, no? Ah, HaKohen Dan. Okay, so you know him. So he used to be a soldier back in the 70s. And he was involved in settlement expansion, trying to seize houses in the Old City back in the 70s, 80s. And I think he's today the chairman of Ateret Kohanim, Metityahu HaKohen. This is a name you should remember. And he actually tried to blackmail my uncle in 1978. I have an uncle, Nora's oldest brother. He wasn't in Jerusalem in 1967. He was staying in Jordan. So he didn't get an ID like us. So he was able to come back in the 70s on a humanitarian permit, like a temporary one, and overstayed. So Netanyahu, he found out my uncle didn't have a permit and tried to blackmail him. He said, I can give you an ID, give me the house. My uncle refused, and he was deported to Jordan. And he stayed in Jordan for over 15 years. He came back in the late 1990s when his wife, who holds Palestinian ID, did family unification. So for my family, it wasn't just about the house, it's an attack on us, on all of the family members, on our status, on us staying in our homeland, our city. So Netanyahu HaKohen, Ateret Kohanim, since 1967, sees 70 buildings in the Muslim quarter. So they have Yeshivat Ateret Yushalayim, Yeshivat Shovo Banim, and they also acquired properties from the Greek and the Armenian churches. They paid money, but it was done illegally. Like it was done by a priest who's not from Palestine, who has no stake aside from taking money and running away. So from my perspective as a lawyer, even those sales, those deals, they're not valid. So similar activity of Ateret Kohanim and others in Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah and others. So among the names that you need to know, aside from Netanyahu HaKohen, Ateret Kohanim we mentioned, Al-Aad is another NGO that works in Silwan, Kolel Chibas Yerushalayim, or Kolel Chibat Yerushalayim. Yes, so this is the NGO that we actually believe is behind my family's forced eviction. And we just got information recently that this NGO, they collect money, tax-exempt donations from around the world. Last year they collected $30 million, Kolel Chibat Yerushalayim, and 75% of them came from New York City. Only from New York. For some reason. So these organizations, including other companies like Ir Al-Tila, where this guy, Eli Atal, is the settler working in our neighborhood these days. And apparently, this guy is in competition with Ateret Kohanim. He used to be part of Ateret Kohanim, then he split, and he runs his own show, and they're competing who evicts and makes more Palestinian families homeless. So these organizations, some of them and companies are registered in Israel, some registered in Europe, some registered in the US. And in our case, there's a US registered company in New Jersey that's involved in the eviction because Eli, this guy, is their agent. He works for a company based in New York, in New Jersey. So all of those organizations, they work together with the Israeli governments and the different governments. Like the new government is not bringing anything new. Same policies, same old shit, sorry for the word. But they're doing it more fast, they're accelerating. So they work with Israeli governments, with the justices, the courts. They also work with the Israeli forces, Israeli police. And ultimately their plan is change demographics. They want to change the demographics in Jerusalem, but not only in Jerusalem, also in the rest of the West Bank and also in 48 territory, like in present-day Israel. They want to change the demographics to ethnically cleanse Palestinians and make us a minority. So as I mentioned, Netanyahu HaKohen, who's now with Ben Gvir. This is a new photo from a few months ago. There's also Daniel Luria, Ateret Kohanim, and Eli Atal, who's this guy I mentioned before. And in addition to them, there's always rabbis, again, for some reason, who are involved. Like in our case, the eviction lawsuit, it had the name of 3 rabbis. One of them is the rabbi of the tomb of Shimon HaTzedek in Sheikh Jarrah. So for some reason, rabbis are filing eviction lawsuits to remove Palestinians from their homes. Is this like okay from a religious point of view? I'm not really sure.
What's the rabbi's name?
I can give you the names, I have them. It's three rabbis, shlosh rabbanim. וזה בדרך כלל כאילו like all the eviction lawsuits also in Sheikh Jarrah, 3 rabbis appear as trustees. Like it's usually an organization, a trust, kolel, and they're appointed as like chairman for the kolel, and they do like the legal action in front of the court. So as I said, not only in Jerusalem, the forced evictions or the forced displacement happens also in Hebron, but there's also families removed from their homes so settlers can live in their place in Hebron. but also in the old city of Jaffa and Akka. Like I've heard of lots of cases where development companies evict the families and develop them to like either rent them for rich people or like make a business to make more money, but they also make Palestinians homeless. So for me, like it happens under different pretext or context, but the result is the same: removing Palestinians, making them homeless, and always changing demographics in favor of Jews. So it's always like a demographic war. They don't want us to be the majority, and more or less like we're 50-50. I think today we're like 50-50, right? 53, 56, something like this, like Palestinians and Jews. We're almost like the same number today. And forced evictions, Kilugirush, Pinui, it's not the only tool or policy they use to do this, to implement changing or maintaining the demographics to their favor. Like it's one of those tools, the evictions. There's also house demolitions, destruction of civilian property. So around 20,000 properties are under the risk of demolition in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. 20,000. That's not counting the ones already demolished. And of course, this is not counting the houses demolished in Gaza during military offensives. Thousands of homes destroyed, families displaced as well, left homeless. Another tool is residency revocation. So I'm a Jerusalemite, and they say I have a permanent residency, Tushav Keva, but it's not Tushav Keva. If I go live in Europe or in London for 7 years, they take it from me. If I take a citizenship or if I marry someone from the UK and get citizenship, then they revoke my residency. It's not permanent. So this is also another tool they use to try and control demographics, particularly in Jerusalem, but also in Al-Julan. Because the Syrians in Al-Julan, they have the same status that Jerusalemites hold, which is not permanent really. And then aside from residency revocation, it's also a system of different privileges. They always say divide and conquer. So Israel, what it did is it made Palestinians with different categories: West Bank, Gaza, Jerusalem, 48, like with citizenship, and then the refugees who are stuck in the refugee camps. And each category of Palestinians has different privileges and different like violations. Like they have different kinds of oppression used against them based on what category they are. And I don't know, like it's especially cruel, and it feels like a system of trying to measure how much we can take. I don't know, like it's kind of some kind of like some sick psychological thing that they're trying to do with us. I don't really understand it, but I feel what it's doing to me and to my people, what it's doing to our mental health and our psyche. Another one is restrictions of movement. And this is done through the wall, checkpoints, flying checkpoints, raiding Palestinian neighborhoods, Palestinian towns in the West Bank. Daily raids, lethal violence, killing, injuring. Mass detention, including of children and women. Encirclement. You know what's encirclement? Like you're being closed on, encirclement of Palestinian communities. And this is done through settlements that are being built closer and closer to Palestinian neighborhoods and strangling them. And lastly, banning and erasing Palestinian Arab and identity. And this is something Israel's been doing for years. It's done not only through banning a flag, it's done by erasing Arabic from the public sphere, banning the use of Arabic, removing it from street signs, changing the names of neighborhoods, streets, towns, no longer using the Arabic word. Like the original name that we Palestinians use is no longer on the signs. And if you drive in the West Bank nowadays, the only signs you see are Israeli communities. They don't really tell you there's a Palestinian town or village next by. Maybe the cities are on the signs, but otherwise nothing on the main highways. Yeah, Al-Quds now it's Yerushalayim. They're also like they stop using the Arabic name, and when they write it in Arabic, they write a Hebrew version using Arabic. So it's erasing us, erasing our identity, and preventing us. Like, why am I not allowed to raise my flag? And like it even goes more than that from my perspective. Like Israeli Arabs is a very problematic term that Israel is trying to force on Palestinians in Israel. And I've had those conversations with Israeli friends who say, like, because I'm from Jerusalem, I have Israeli ID, I'm Israeli. No, I'm not Israeli. And then they want to force this identity on me, saying, I'm Israeli, not Palestinian. No, but identity is something that you choose. If you choose that you are to identify as Australian, you're Australian. I respect that.
The culture.
Exactly. So all of those tools are practiced not just in Jerusalem, but in the West Bank, in Masafir Yatta, in Khan al-Ahmar, in Haifa. Shavot Banim movement, by the way, which does settlement expansion in my family's neighborhood, is the same movement attacking the monastery in Haifa. You've heard about this. They've been attacking a monastery in the past couple of months. It's Shavot Banim, the same movement working in Jerusalem Old City. I collected like some numbers. You can't really see them, but I can share the PowerPoints later. But here it tells you Palestinian fatalities across the year. So in 2011, 113 people were killed, Palestinians. 2014, during the Gaza offensive, 2,325 people were killed. And every year, dozens of Palestinians are killed. It's normalized. Like, it's normalized to the point that some media agencies don't care about the names. They just say, last week, 5 Palestinians were killed. They don't even bother say they were human beings who had names, who had children, who had lives. We're so dehumanized by media and by Israel.
They were killed.
Sorry?
Many of the killed guys were children.
مش سامعك. Children. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like every time when Israeli media reports a Palestinian getting killed, they say Mikhabel Nora. They shot a terrorist, regardless of what happened, what's the context, who's the person who was shot, how old they are. Like, I've seen media reports describing a 12-year-old a terrorist. Like, are you out of your mind? This is also the number of structures demolished, seized, and as you see over the years, it keeps increasing. Same for demolition, same for, this is like the human cost of this conflict since 1987 until last year. 14,000 lives, according to The Economist, lost since 1987. There's a cost to this, and both sides have to realize it. We pay the bigger price, but still, for me, it's sad when I see an Israeli getting killed. I also feel sad because it's a cycle. Like, when an Israeli gets killed, there's gonna be a response, and the army will go and enter Jenin and kill 10 Palestinians. There's gonna be another response, and it keeps going back and forth. It's like we're playing tennis, but the cost is human lives. What's apartheid? So apartheid is a legal term in international law. It was defined earlier, but also included in the 2002 Rome Statute. And it's defined as inhuman acts of a character similar to crimes against humanity, committed in the context of an institutionalized regime, meaning like it's not random, there's a system. And I believe there is a system. So a system of institutionalized regime of systematic oppression, decay, domination, like control, by one racial group over another. Or groups, or maybe not one group, maybe more groups, with the intention of maintaining that regime. So it's maintaining control over a population that's different to you, and doing anything in your capacity, using force, any policies, laws you need to maintain that. That's apartheid. Why apartheid, though, from my perspective? It's apartheid because, first of all, there's two different sets of laws. There's a law that applies to Israelis, like here in Israel, but also when they are in the West Bank, in the occupied territory. But in the occupied territory, Palestinians are subjected to military law. But even under civilian law, because I'm Jerusalemite, and civilian law in Israel was extended after Jerusalem was occupied, and it applies in Jerusalem. But even that law is discriminatory. Like, even under the Israeli civil law system, there is discrimination. Like, some of the laws by how they were formulated, exclude you as a non-Jew. Like this privilege, it says only for Jews, and that's the nation-state law most recently. But before the nation-state law, there's dozens of laws. I think the NGO Adala has a whole database with like 100 something, 63 laws that are outright racist, discriminatory. This right, this privilege is only for Jews. And the most important one is the right of return, by the way. We said over half the Palestinians were displaced. Now the return law only applies to Jews. So any Jew from anywhere, and you know this, any Jew from around the world can come, but not the Palestinians who were displaced 7 decades ago, They can't come back, not allowed, because the law discriminates against them. So for me, the law is discriminatory, and sometimes the law applies differently when you're not Jew. So if you're Jewish, the law will, like, it might be a good law on the face of it, but only gives you privilege for you as a Jew. But when you're not Jewish, it applies differently. One of those laws, which affected my family in the old city, is the Administrative Affairs Law of 1970, which basically allows Jews to reclaim property they owned before 1948. But again, this law excludes Palestinians, like non-Jews, because Palestinians, whether Muslim, Christian, or other, they have lost properties in 48 and 67. My family has, by the way. But because we're not Jewish, we're not allowed to reclaim this property. But the law only allows for Jews. So this is a racist, discriminatory law, and this is apartheid. In East Jerusalem, in the old city, like all the Palestinians are not allowed to renovate. אסור לעשות שיפוצים בעיר העתיקה, ממנוע. ליהודים כן. עכשיו אנחנו שמנו air condition, מזגן, in 2011. Then we got a court decision saying you're not allowed. You need a permit because this is a historical building. So it was the antiquities department and the custodian. איيش الكاستوديان؟ אפוטרופוס. אז האפוטרופוס ורשות העתיקות שלחו לנו בבית משפט, אסור לשים מזגן, כי this is a historical building. Now the problem is our neighbors, the settlers who live in the same building, they have an AC. Apartheid. And Gideon Levy wrote an article about this, really good article, you have to look it up. You can learn that there's apartheid in Israel from an air condition, مزگان. Why also apartheid? Because there's different and racist policies for Palestinians and non-Jews. So the policies are different. Like the government behaves different with you if you're Jewish. The police behaves different with you if you're Jewish. The army behaves different. The court behaves different. When you're Palestinian, it's different treatment, not the same. Again, this is apartheid. Even a policeman behaves different. Like I have Israeli friends who told me, I didn't know this thing existed, that sometimes a policeman stops them, they're not wearing a seatbelt, and that the policeman tells them, like, take care next time, put a seatbelt and go, azhara. But for Palestinians, no azhara. Fine, 1,000 shekels. One time they stopped me on the highway because I had 2 uzniyot, not one. He stopped me from the highway to Tel Aviv, the policeman gave me a fine. But I have Israeli friends who don't. For drinking, for seatbelt, for everything, policemen sometimes stop them. If they're Jewish, they can give them azhara and go. I know, I'm not saying no, but זה אכיפה מוגברת. זה מה שאנחנו אומרים, שבירושלים ספציפית יש אכיפה מוגברת של המשטרה, של העירייה, של כל דבר. כאילו, from time to time they do like campaign. Like they don't have a lot of money in the area. They send all the مفكحين, يلا, old city, Friday. The best time they like the area to do like fines, Friday during Friday prayer. When Muslims go pray in Al-Aqsa, all the mifakhin go around the old city giving tickets. They don't do this. I see it. When you guys have holidays, they don't. Like when there's a football match in Teddy Stadium in Jerusalem, also like people park in the street. Police don't give doch because they're Jews. I know, but it's the same. Friday prayer. It's more important than a game. And as I said, the courts behave differently with you when you're Palestinian. And when you're Palestinian, the court, the government, the Ministry of Interior, the municipality, the apotropos, Bituch Leumi, the court, all of them, they're working together against you. They don't like you as a Palestinian, they want you out. And they try any way to get rid of you. So this is my mom, Nora. I think, who knows Nora of you? I think everyone maybe. Because everyone knows Nora. Or we might have seen about Nora in the news. So mom became like a small kind of icon in Palestine since 2015 because of the campaign we did around the house. And she's a very outspoken person, really good speaker. And she appeared in all media, in AFP, Associated Press, New York Times, Al Jazeera, and others. So our campaign today is called Free Nora's Home. But when the campaign started, as I said, 2015, it was called Stop Nora's Eviction. And I revised the name later because I don't want to call it eviction, because I think naming it eviction doesn't describe what it really is. So we changed our campaign to Save Nora's Home, especially like during the recent campaign. But then after the forced eviction took place on 11th of July, we changed the name to Free Nora's House, because that's my and my family's target now. They removed them from the house, but we're going to do everything in our capacity to get back. It's my grandma's house. We're not owners, we're tenants. From Jordan. But because my mom was born there and her mother died there, and because my family were displaced from somewhere else, they should be allowed to get back to this house unless Israel gives back our properties. Give my family the properties they took in 48, 67, then come demand what you say is yours. So this is our campaign, Free Nora's Home. And of course you've heard about Sheikh Jarrah. They did a huge campaign, and everyone in the world heard about Sheikh Jarrah. In New York, in the US, in Europe, in Spain, everywhere heard about Sheikh Jarrah. And it's the same. What's happening in Sheikh Jarrah is happening in my family's neighborhood. And dozens of families and lives are at risk. And they destroy lives. That's what they do. Every time they demolish a house or evict a family or kill a child or hold them in prison, they destroy a family, they destroy a life. So this is from Instagram. So during the campaign, like maybe 4 weeks before the eviction, they suspended our account. And this is what social media does. Like for me, Sheikh Jarrah, what made the change there was social media, because before Palestinians, our voices could only reach the world through media, through CNN and through Fox News, and they lie. They don't tell the reality. But social media changed it, because we don't need CNN to tell the story, we tell it. I go on social media and talk. We do a protest, we put on social media. But social media and corporations are silencing our voices. They suspend our accounts. They shadow ban our accounts, like my Facebook page, my private Facebook page. You don't find me, and like if we're friends on Facebook and I post something, you will not see me unless you search for my name and look for my post. They shadow ban. You don't see it.
Why do they do it?
I don't know. It depends on the people running those organizations. But for example, a lot of those social media companies, to my knowledge, their Middle East verification centers are in Israel. So the people reviewing the posts for being like inappropriate are most likely Israelis in some of the cases, because the center is here for the Middle East. Sah George? Yeah, he works in this field, so he knows. So this is our message, that Palestinian voices matter. And your message as Mustaqlim is Palestinian lives matter. And I agree, yeah. Palestinian lives, but also voices. Like, I really appreciate what you do, but you guys need to work better on getting more Palestinians to be sitting around the table. I know it's problematic. Not all Palestinians want to speak with Israelis. Some people will criticize me for coming to talk tonight. They will say I'm normalizing with Israelis, but no. For me, you guys and me, we have a shared message. We both believe that something wrong is happening here, and we're trying to challenge it. So keep it up, but make sure that this activism is a joint one. And I will talk more about this in the end. And here, this is the different campaigns: Save Jenin, Save Gaza, Free Palestine, Save Beta, Save Al-Naqab. مسافر يطا, Justice for Iyad Hallaq, Save Beit Dajan, Ahmad Manasra, Free Ahmad Manasra, Save Silwan Khan Al-Ahmar. All of those are communities that are targeted by Israel. And there's dozens. If I'm gonna write all of them, we're gonna need 4 slides just to write the names of communities under risk by settlers or by Israel or by violence. The list is too long to count. But again, this is why there's a need to unite voices and unite the different Palestinian voices. I'm trying to work on this, to unite the voice of Sheikh Jarrah with the Old City, with Silwan, with Al-Naqab, with Khan Al-Ahmar, Masafir Yatta. It's important, all of those communities and all of the different groups, the activist groups, like there's Mustaqlim, Zazim, Umdim, Free Jerusalem, all of you need to work together because we're going through a very difficult stage. Like this is very difficult times for Palestinians, but I think also for you guys. And the way forward is working together. That's the only way forward. Otherwise, we will fight 100 more years, whether we call it Israel or Palestine. Call it whatever you want. It's one land. There's 2 peoples living in it, and they have to learn how to live together. Otherwise, 100 more years of conflict. This is a quote from The Hobbit. Who read The Hobbit? ولا حدا? Okay, it's a book, a fantasy book by a British author. It was also a movie, Lord of the Rings. So it's a quote from the book. It says, "I have found that it is the small everyday deed of ordinary folks that keep the darkness at bay. Small acts of kindness and love." And I believe that this is what we need to counter this evil system we're both trying to navigate. We need to show more kindness for each other, and we need to be thinking how to work together to stop it. מה לעשות? זהו, סיימנו. Summary, הנה. סיימנו. סיכום. So in summary, as I said, I really believe the only way forward is that of a partnership, okay? A partnership and a joint intersectional struggle. So not just one community, all the communities. Not just the Palestinians and the Eritreans and the asylum seekers and the LGBT. I think all of those groups who are oppressed on our side and your side need to be getting together and talking. It's important. And I believe in a true partnership of Muslims, Jews, Christians, Druze, Israelis, Palestinians, all nationalities. And my family's struggle the past half a year was a joint struggle of not only Palestinians and Israelis, there were also Italians, Spanish, Americans, Europeans, Japanese, from all around the world. They came, they listened, they protested with us. And this is important. This movement of all of us coming together should continue. And all of us should come together and say occupation no more, oppression no more, because we both believe it's wrong. And one last thing, I really believe in art. And we should use more art, like do more signs with colors and paint. People, the colors attract, and I think art is also a form of resistance. Resistance is not only shoot or like carry a knife, it can be painting or drawing or doing a mural. So I would like to see more of that. Thank you everyone. And if anyone has questions, I'm ready. Al mic.
Hi.
Raise the voice, Sama.
Thank you very much. Can you give us a little bit brief about the family's cleansing process, like with them? Because I heard a lot while we were like protesting outside of your house, and then there were a lot of shady deals, and so a little bit brief about how did
Sure. So the family's forced displacement and eviction took place over a period of 48 years. 48 שנים. זה התחיל בשנות ה-70. First time it was the אפוטרופוס. כן, זה התחיל עם האפוטרופוס, הוא ביקש כאילו שנשלם שכירות, וביקש שיעלה את השכירות. ואז ההורים שלי הלכו לעורך דין והלכו לבית משפט, וזה התחיל משם. זה ניסיון ראשון. השני היה מתתיהו הכהן, שביקש כאילו מהדוד שלי, דן, כן. אז מתתיהו, שהוא ביקש מדוד שלי, תן לי את הבית, אני אתן לך תעודה. הוא סירב ואז גירש אותו לירדן. זה שני. פעם שלישי זה היה עיריית ירושלים. באו, ביקשו שההורים שלי יעשו שיפוצים בבית, שהבית מסוכן. ואז עברו מהדירה, וממש אז שהתחילו העבודות, קיבלנו מבית משפט שאסור לנו לשפץ, אין לנו אישור. ואז התחילו תהליך דרך עורך דין לבקש אישור, ולא נתנו אישור. עכשיו, שנה אחרי זה, ב-84, גירשו את המשפחה לידינו, משפחת אל-קרקי. ואז שגירשו אותם, ומתנחלים נכנסו לבית, הם עשו כאילו אקספנשן. כן, רחבו את הבית, וחסמו את הכניסה, לא היה לנו דלת. 6-10 שנה, אמא ואבא, לא היה להם דלת לבניין. חסמו את הדלת. They didn't, because we moved, הם עברו להתחיל שיפוצים, ואז סגרו את הדלת, אתה מבין? וזה אסטרטגיה שעושים, לא רק איתנו, עם הרבה משפחות. מתחילים עם שיפוץ, אומרים שאתה צריך לשפץ הבית. עכשיו, משפחות לא מבינים את זה, שאתה צריך אישור, וגם לא נותנים לך אישור בתור פלסטיני. אז אתה מתחיל העבודה, אם ההורים שלי לא הפסיקה העבודה ב-83, אז כבר גירשו אותם מאז. ועשו את זה עם כמה משפחות שלא הפסיקו העבודות. משפחת אבו עסב, בוא נגיד, 2019, משפחה האחרונה לפני המשפחה שלי, זה היה בגלל עשו שיפוץ בלי אישור. ושוב, לא נותנים לפלסטיני אישור, זה כמו היתר בנייה, לא נותנים. אז עברנו את זה, ונשארנו 6-10 שנה בבית משפט, כדאי שנפתח דלת חדש ונעשה שיפוץ. וב-99 השופט שאל את אמא, למה את לא גרה בבית? אז היא אמרה לו, אין לי דלת. אמר לה, איך יעני אין דלת? אני רוצה לראות. והשופט בא, נכנס לעתיקה, נכנס לדירת המתנחלים ליד, וקפץ מהחלון שלהם שיכנס לדירה. ואז נתן לאמא ואבא אישור לפתיחת דלת חדש ולעשות שיפוצים. חזרנו 2001, ואז הממשלה היא כשלה. לא הצליחה לגרש את משפחה שלי, ואז התחילו תהליך חדש דרך העמותה, מתנחלים. כאילו ב-2010 נתנו את הבעלות לחברת מתנחלים, והם התחילו תהליך פינוי נגד משפחה שלי. אז 2010 עד 2016, 6 שנים בית משפט. בסוף בית משפט העליון נתן החלטה שנתן אמא ואבא, ורק אמא ואבא, לגור בבית עוד 10 שנים, ואז הבית לעבור למתנחלים. אבל הבית משפט, וזה בית משפט עליון לצדק, זה לא צדק בכלל, אסר שאני והאחים שלי נגור עם הורים שלי בבית. אמר, אסור לכם לגור איתם, ואם המשכתם לגור איתם, אנחנו גם נפנה את אמא ואבא. באיזה היגיון זה? ואז עברנו, אני הייתי בן 27. ואז עברנו, זה היה אני, אחותי הקטנה, בת 22, ואחי הגדול אחמד, שהוא גם פעיל זכויות אדם מעיר העמים. אז גירשו גם אותו, אשתו ושני ילדים קטנים. אסור לנו לגור עם ההורים. ואז מ-2016 רק ההורים מותר להם, ואני ואחותי הקטנה שכרנו בית בחוץ לעתיקה, בשכונת שועפאט. עכשיו, עוד שנתיים מ-2016, הבית משפט נתן למתנחלים להגיש עוד תביעה. וזה כבר 48 שנים, שכל פעם סוגרים תיק, פותחים תיק חדש נגד המשפחה שלי. 48 שנה, 5 עורכי דין, 10,000 שקלים ששלמנו לעורכי דין ולבתי משפט, ובסוף גרשו את אמא ואבא, ושהם גדולים, אבא 73, אמא 68, והם חולים. ועוד גרוע, אבא שלי היה במשטרת ישראל, 25 שנה. וכשהוא היה במשטרה, וכשהוא מקבל משכורת במשטרה, היה משלם חצי זכירות לעורך דין שלא יגרשו אותו מהבית שלו. ובסוף, אחרי שהוא כבר, מה זה retired? שנכנס, כן, הוא כבר בפנסיה, אבא שלי שנים. וכשהוא בפנסיה גרשו אותו, שמו אותו בכביש, משטרה באה לפנות אותו. מגעיל, גועל נפש, זה מה שהם. ואמרנו להם, דווקא אמרתי לשוטר הערבי שבא איתם, אמרתי לו, אתה מגעיל, ויגיע איזה יום שיעשו את זה בך. ואז זה היה התיק החדש, תביעה חדשה, 2018, עד שגרשו אותם. זה כאילו בקיצור מה שקרה בבית. I didn't hear what he said, but I guess so. בדיוק, וזה כאילו, זה בא עם מחיר כאילו לנפש, לחיים שלך, for your brain, for your mind, your mental health. It's a daily thing. כן, בדיוק, זה מה שמנסים לשבור את הפלסטינים, ולנו היה מאוד חשוב we don't go down without a fight. We kept fighting, we kept shouting. They want us to be a silent victim, and we say no silent victim for you. עוד שאלות?
One comment.
תפדל חביבי.
One comment, Ekdesh Galicia, which
Yeah.
is basically the foundation that kick you out. The people that are like moving into this apartment, they are not the actual. They have nothing to do with Ekdesh Galicia.
Yes.
I was protesting out of his house.
And he's from Edut
I'm
Galicia.
descendant of Galicia. None of them is from Galicia. They took over the Afotopus, the centers. And
The government give it to them.
They just give it to their own
Exactly.
people, and they are like suing it on the behalf of people that have nothing to do with the apartment. So
And not just that, also like in all of the evictions, like including in Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, like some of the claims might be true. Maybe 200 years ago your family owned my family's building in the old city, okay? But it's not you or someone from your family coming to ask for the house. It's an organization with zero connection. And I think the one case in Sheikh Jarrah, there was a case where the owner doesn't want the Palestinian family out, you know about this, and the government is still working to evict the family. כן, הוא בעירייה או משהו, כן. איך שזה מה שהבנתי, שהוא לא רוצה ואפילו גם ממשיכים.
So this is an amazing story. מיכאל בן יאיר was born
ايش حبيبتي؟ كان منيح ورد
סיר מיך.
בית שהוא היה בן 6 או משהו כזה, וחברו לעיר המערבי. מה שקרה זה שהוא בטעות גילה שיש בית שהעמותות המתנחלים...
Okay, if I say שולמית story without saying her name, זכר שולמית שלה, כאילו משפחה שלה שיש להם בתים כן, סבבה, נכון?
מיכאל בן יאיר כדי לנסות לקבל פוזיישן, לקבל חזרה בעלות על הנכס. מדובר על היועץ המשפטי לממשלה לשעבר, כן? אז עמותת המתנחלים טענה שהם לא הצליחו לאתר אותו.
כן, אבל הוא התעקש.
ואז הוא נתן לפלסטיני, כן, להשאיר אותם.
ועדיין לא נתנו.
הוא קיבל בעלות עדיין, הוא לא קיבל עדיין בעלות, זה עדיין אצל המתנחלים, הבית
כן, ולא יתנו, זה הם המתנחלים יישאר. ויש לי עוד... כן, יש, והם רוצים לגרש אותה.
אבל הוא לא מוכן שיוציאו אותו.
הוא לא רוצה, אבל הממשלה ממשיכה עם זה. זה הכוונה.
אני יודעת שהוא...
הוא סגר הסכם עם הפלסטיני.
טובה, אינשאללה, אני מקווה. ועוד סיפור אני רוצה לספר לכם. אז אחד מפעילות של פי ג'רוסלם, אז היא אמרה לנו שהיא במקור, היא משפחה שלה סורית במקור. אז הם כאילו מהיהודים שהיו פה לפני 48, ב-200-300 שנה. אז היא סיפרה לנו סיפור שהיא משפחה שלה יש להם 5 בתים ברובע היהודי. ואז הם כאילו ב-48 הם גם עזבו, והבתים האלה כאילו עברו פלסטינים, ואחרי 67 משפחה שלה ביקשה מממשלה שתחזיר את הבתים שלה. עכשיו, בגלל שהם מזרחים, הם כאילו עשו עליהם קומבינציה, נתנו לסבתא שלה שלא קוראת עברית, חתמה על משהו, נתנו לה כאילו 10,000 שקל ל5 בתים, וזהו, הלך עליהם, לא נתנו להם חזרה לבתים שלהם בעיר העתיקה, ברובע היהודי. והרעיון שלי הוא שהגזענות היא נכון, רוב הגזענות היא נגד הפלסטינים, אבל לא רק, אבל יש גזענות גם בתוך החברה הישראלית, נגד מזרחי, ונגד האריתרי, ונגד האתיופי. וזה בעיה, הסיסטם הוא בעייתי, כאילו הבסיס שלו מהנכבה עד היום הוא בעייתי. וזה כאילו, זה פרי רעיל, poison fruit. The poison tree gives poison fruit. This needs to change. תודה לחביבתי.
יכול להיות שזה באמת משהו מאוד תמים, אבל אני כאילו, יש לי פנטזיה שהפלסטינים שהגישו לבתים שלהם בתל אביב ובקטמון וכל זה יגישו תביעה להחזר לבתים שלהם,
אבל החוק לא נותן לה... כן, זה אני מסכים.
משותפת גדולה.
כן.
כל הבתים ביחד מגישים תביעה להחזר הבתים. נראה את ישראל מתמודדת עם זה.
כן, נכסי נפקדים, הפוך.
נכון, בדיוק, אבל תביעה משותפת, לא אחד.
תביעה ייצוגית.
תביעה ייצוגית.
לא, אני מאמין בזה, ותשמעי, חלק מהבעיה היא עורכי הדין. עכשיו, אפילו עורכי הדין כאילו הפלסטינים, שהם כאילו מהצפון ומירושלים, לא עובדים אסטרטגית, בדיוק, והרבה מהם רק רוצים כאילו למלא את הכסים של כיס, כסף. אז במקום לעבוד, במקום כאילו לייצג 10 משפחות כתיק אחד, הם עושים תיק, פה משלם, מקבלים גם מארגונים. את מבינה? וזה חלק מהבעיה, שהעורכי דין לא עובדים ביחד, they don't coordinate with each other, ואני מאמין בזה שהדרך קדימה גם כאילו מבחינה משפטית, היא תביעות, כן, תביעות ייצוגיות, לא רק בהריסות בתים, גם בפינויים, גם. Thank you.
זה לדעתי הפתרון.
Jude has a question.
Can you tell a bit about the cost of eviction?
Sure. The cost of the eviction. So they left us for 2 months under fear and stress, because in the beginning they were supposed to evict my family on the 11th of June, but they didn't come on the 11th of June, and they didn't tell us they're not gonna come on the 11th of June. So we were just waiting, and at night we discovered it was postponed by the police from 15 days before. So 15 days before 11th of June, the police knew that they were not gonna implement, but didn't tell us. They left my elderly parents under fear and stress, and for 2 weeks all of us were taking Xanax every night. Myself, my mama, my baba, all of us Xanax, because you don't know, they're gonna come any minute. So they didn't come on the 11th, and the police rejected the request 2 weeks before, and we only knew later why, because they said they didn't have enough manpower. אין להם מספיק כוח אדם לעשות את הפינוי. ולמה אין להם מספיק כוח אדם? כי היה 2 הריסות או 3 הריסות בתים במזרח ירושלים באותו יום. אז הם היו עסוקים לגרש פלסטינים אחרים. ואחרי זה הם ביקשו המתנחלים פינוי גמיש. כאילו נותנים תאריך עד תאריך ובאים בכל רגע, את לא יודעת. ואז השאירו אותנו עוד פעם שבועיים תחת פחד, חרדות, ואמא שלי יש לה פאניק אטאקס. התקף חרדה. היא סובלת מתקפי חרדה, ובשבועיים האלה יום יום היא ואבא התקפי חרדה. ואני ואחי, וסוריה ראתה את זה, כן, היא הייתה אצלנו וראתה. כן, היא הייתה, גם אני חביבתי, אני לא הייתי יום הפינוי, כי יומיים לפני הייתי חולה. חליתי והלכתי כאילו מחוץ לעתיקה, ויום לפני הפינוי גם אמא חלתה, ואחותי לקחה אותה לא לבית חולים, זה היה מרכז רפואי, ואז היא ישנה בבית שלי ושל אחותי שבשופט. ובלילה הזאת באו, כי היה רק 4 ו5 פעילים, אז באו בלילה שיש פחות אנשים, ויש 8 מצלמות שמסתכלים על כניסת הבית, 8, לא רק 1 ו2, 8. ואת מבינים? וזה, נשארנו ככה חודשיים, וזה, like, I'm still recovering until today from it. My mom is still recovering until today from it. My dad, my sister, all of us, like, I only got back to work 2 weeks ago. I can't function, I can't feed myself, I can't take care of myself, I don't have a routine. We're still recovering, so the price is high. Not just money, not physically only, not for health, for your mind, לנפש. זה מחיר כבד, זה מחיר מאוד מאוד כבד, ורוב הזמן אתה נשאר לבד. כאילו הפלסטינים מפחדים, כי הם יוצאים או עוצרים אותם או מרביצים להם, אסור להם. ישראלים, לא כל הישראלים אכפת להם, יש כאלה שכן אכפת להם, ואנשי פרי ג'רוסלם לא שאירו אותנו בכלל. כל החודשיים 3 האלה היו איתנו אחרי גם הגירוש. התחילו גם לבוא לבקר את אמא אחרי הגירוש, להביא פרחים, להביא שוקולד, להביא פירות לאמא, שתרגיש יותר טוב. והם עשו את העבודה הזאת. מבחינתי, אנשים כמוהם וכמוכם שהולכים לח'אן אל-אחמר ומסאפר יטא, שהנאצים היו הורגים את יהודים במלחמת העולם השנייה, היו אנשים שעזרו ליהודים, קראו להם the righteous among the nations. And I believe you guys are the righteous among your nation. The rest of your nation, I think Jews, Israelis, they're very smart people. Their heads, though, and their hearts are not in the right place. They have potential to do a lot for science, for medicine, for humanity, but their heart is set in the wrong place. And only when that changes will there be change here. I think the key to change is in your hands, not in our hands. I can try and come and tell you about my reality, try to convince you it's wrong, but you're the guys in control. Like the scale of power is in your favor, not in my favor. Shukran, guys. Thank you for listening. Tuda lakum.
Okay, for a change, I kept my mouth shut. Rafat, I don't think I can add anything. Hold on, let's zoom here. The people, I think it was fantastic. Rafat Sub Laban. I thought it was extremely interesting. Last part was in now also one thing he didn't mention besides the emotional and physical price they paid, there was also a financial one, and the family had got, after the eviction, got a bill. Also, when the settlers threw their stuff on the street, the family had to pay for that, and of course for the eviction itself the family has to pay over 50,000 shekels. Yeah. If your house gets demolished, it, you know, easily the cost starts at 100,000 shekels that you have to pay when your house is being demolished. Okie doke, guys. Oh, one new comment. Ish chacham beragish. Extremely. He is so smart. Their whole family, they're amazing, seriously amazing. His brothers, his sister, his mom, his dad, they are seriously all so smart and amazing. Full respect for this family. So remember, free Nora's home. That's the slogan, that's the tagline. Free Nora's home. Make noise, guys. Bye, Yush.